Welcome to Nathan's Papers Books for Congress magazine podcast, where we talk about all things books and Congress. We are in the process of revamping some of our video content. We've done a lot of book mails and book reviews and things like that. We post regularly on social media regarding activity before Congress, and we decided to lump all of that content into this podcast format that's going to come out weekly. Now, what is Books for Congress magazine? Well, the idea of Books for Congress came from researching some of the American founders and their love for reading. They used books as a way to supplement their personal knowledge on matters of military and governance. In the early years of the Revolution, and probably their whole lives, but they wrote about it quite frequently during the Revolution. And even as early as 1775, when General George Washington was preparing to take over the newly formed Continental Army, even though he had experience in the provincial army of Great Britain, he still sought out military books to supplement his knowledge. John Adams did the same thing as he was learning more about the military and working in the Second Continental Congress to build more infrastructure around it while the soldiers were in the military theater. But it was James Madison who kind of crystallized the concept in a 1783 congressional report, where he developed a list of hundreds of books that he wanted to make available to members of Congress because he felt that some of their lawmaking reflected their lack of knowledge on important subjects. The books that he listed were about topics like the history of nations, politics, natural law, maritime law, and the maritime industry. Um, all these things that were really important. Oh, the law of treaties and negotiations. All these things that were really important as the at that point it was the uh, Articles of Confederation government really tried to solidify and improve their lawmaking, and really kind of began to deal with much more complex issues. So, the Books for Congress magazine, we review books that kind of fall into those categories that James Madison listed in his initial congressional report. Sometimes we review books that were from the colonial era, or we've even found books that were on James Madison's list. But we primarily review contemporary books, new publications, and things along that line. And we also incorporate some elements of what Congress is doing um, in terms of the current Congress, which is the 118th Congress. We don't focus on everything they're doing because, to be quite honest, they're kind of all over the place. But we do focus on some of the core issues that Congress had to grapple with early in the American Revolution. And those are trade and commerce, national defense, monetary and fiscal policy, and diplomacy and foreign affairs. So that's what we're going to be talking about weekly here in the Books for Congress magazine podcast. Now, right now, Congress is on a summer work period. And the August work period goes back all the way to the year 1775 when the Second Continental Congress, after a whirlwind a few months of creating a number of institutions that still exist in our government today. They were convening in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As you can imagine, the weather was sweltering hot. They were working 12, 14-hour days. The issues were very complex and they needed a break. So they took a break for the month of August, traveled home. Some of them, for sure. I don't know about all of them. And I'm talking about the delegates to the Second Continental Congress. And it wasn't really a rest period. Just looking at the example of John Adams, he spent a lot of time working with the local Massachusetts government that was kind of developing, kind of politicking in their states and things like that. And that's really what members of Congress are doing right now. They're holding meetings in their districts, touring the different counties, um, and that kind of thing. But really just kind of taking a break from the day-to-day work of committee hearings and floor debate that happens in Washington, D.C. And of course, the hashing out of major pieces of legislation. Now, when Congress gets back in probably the second or third week of September, they really only have about 4 or 5 months to finish out the 118th Congress. And they're going to be in the middle of elections. The productivity for at least the congressional committees is already lower this year than it was last year, probably because it's an election year. We've been following Congress for many years, but we've only been tracking data for Congress the last 2 years, and their productivity in terms of committee hearings is down this year. It's kind of been a wild year with the changing of the Speaker of the House. And so I'm sure that there's going to be somewhat of a reset button with the swearing in of the 119th Congress, but it seems like they are going to still see what they can accomplish in these next few months, and we're going to be following it closely. So this is just an introduction into what the Books for Congress magazine is going to try to do for you weekly. We hope you find the information interesting and informative. And look forward to sharing more with you in the coming weeks and months. Thanks so much for listening. Bye bye.